Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This week on Encounter Design, we are doing the Spirit Storm, which is an encounter where we are starting with a Banshee, or maybe a Noon Wraith if you're playing a Witcher-inspired campaign, something like that. And we're going to spice the encounter up with dynamic terrain, relentless time pressure, and a twist on the monster's abilities like we do every week here on Encounter Design. So for this encounter, you're going to want to make sure you have a ton of open space to set the encounter in. This can be indoors, this could be in a dungeon, or it could be in a deserted village, or it could even be in the wilderness someplace where they come across sort of an abandoned graveyard in the wilderness. But step one, you're going to create a big open space that your characters have to traverse to get to the bad guy. And second of all, you're going to put some cover, some line of sight blockers. So if you're outside, these could be trees, these could be standing stones, dolmens, something like that. If you're underground, these could be pillars or stalactites, stalagmites. And then once you've got your line of sight blockers kind of set up the way you want them, you're also going to include some spawners. Okay, so above ground, these would probably be gravestones, sort of grave markers. Underground, these could be sort of piles of bone, or they could be coffins or sarcophagi underground in a dungeon, something like that. But you need to have about 3 or 4 each of these spawners and of these line of sight blockers. So I like the idea of a Banshee. I like the idea, the way they do it in The Witcher, where they're kind of wearing like a wedding dress, or, they have garlands in their hair or something. This is the ghost of somebody, a woman who never got married. Maybe she was engaged or something and she never got to experience the joys of marriage. Or it could be a young wife who never got to experience the joys of motherhood, right? So there's an inherent tragic sort of sad element to this story. So for whatever reason, our heroes come along. We've got Rudolph Van Richten, we've got Esmeralda, and this week, let's go ahead and include yours truly, the henchman. And we need to start them off way out here at the edge of the sort of encounter area. The Banshee, the Noon Wraith, whatever you're calling it, it does not move during this encounter. Okay, and we're not going to do the thing where it has the wail that knocks you down to 0 hit points. We're including enough other interesting stuff that we don't need to mess with that. So the first thing is dynamic terrain. So the terrain gimmick for this is this constant storm of wind that is kind of spiraling out in sort of a reverse maelstrom from the Banshee herself. So when the encounter first starts, we're going to roll initiative. She manifests and this wind kicks up and starts spinning around the whole area, kind of away from her like this. So that instantly makes all movement in the area of the haunt costs twice as much, so it's going to be harder for the party to get up close to her. And we're going to make it so that all ranged attacks that aren't spell attacks, for example, are made with disadvantage, because the wind tends to blow everything off course, right? So the party is going to see her, she manifests, and this wind starts blowing, and we roll initiative. I would go ahead and have the environmental effect. I always have that coming off at initiative count 10. So the environmental effect in this case is going to be on initiative count 10, there's a sudden gale force burst of wind, and everybody on the battlefield, all the players at least, anybody who's not ephemeral in nature, needs to roll, a DC 14 strength saving throw. And if they fail, they are pushed by this wind. And the way we're going to do it is that since the winds are kind of spiraling out from her, I know meteorologically that's impossible, but they're spiraling out from her, so she kind of moves away at a diagonal from where, so if Van Richten starts here and he fails his save, he's going to move this way. We're going to roll a d4. That's how many squares he gets pushed if he fails this strength save. So it's always kind of diagonally away from the Banshee herself that people get moved. I also might do, well, we'll come back to that. So that's environmental effect on count 10. Then we have our relentless time pressure. So we're going to roll initiative for the minions in this encounter. And basically when that initiative count comes around, each one of these gravestones or piles of bones or whatever you're using spawns a kind of will-o'-the-wisp thing. I love using will-o'-wisps in all kinds of encounters. These aren't going to be actual will-o'-wisps. They're just going to kind of be motes of light. And, if you want to make them a little creepier, maybe they can give off the sound of a crying baby, something like that. But on this initiative count, whatever we roll for the minions, one of these is going to emerge from each one of these headstones, right? And these motes of light, basically they move 15 feet on their turn. And then if they are adjacent to, and they all move towards the nearest hero, right? So on their turn, they move towards the nearest PC. And if they end adjacent to a PC, they explode in a blast of necrotic energy that does like 3d8. It needs to be a significant amount of damage for whatever level your party is. 4d8 damage in a sort of 10-foot radius, right? So one round of that happening, and the party's going to quickly figure out, okay, we need to stop these things spawning, or we need to shoot them before they get to us. We need to stay away from these things because they do significant damage when they hit. So I would make them like they can't dash or anything like that. They move 15 feet and then they explode if they're adjacent to somebody. I would give them like an AC 8, since the party's probably going to be at disadvantage on ranged attacks against them. Maybe just give them like 1 hit point. And so, the party just has a chance to sort of explode them or get rid of them. You could also make it, depending on what your layout is, they just always move 15 feet towards somebody and then explode. So if the party can kind of stay out of their range, then they don't have to spend the actions trying to destroy them. It depends on how many PCs you've got as far as what you want to do with that. So that's our time pressure. These things are constantly spawning, constantly moving towards the party and creating problems. Then we have our monster twist ability. So on initiative count 20, the Banshee gets her villain action. And her villain action is sort of a wail of despair. And this blasts out from her, maybe do the thing where she kind of opens her mouth unnaturally wide and kind of turns her head and it kind of blasts out like a fire hose kind of thing. The reason we're doing it that way is we want to have a chance to express that it's actually blocked by these trees or pillars or whatever you've got. Line of sight blockers. If you have like Van Richten is using a wand of magic missiles against this girl, he can pop out, shoot her, pop back, pop out. And so each turn, he doesn't have to worry about her villain action. But anyway, it blasts out from her. Anybody who does not have total cover needs to make, let's say, a DC, what did I write down here? Let's say a DC 13 wisdom saving throw. If they fail, they are dazed on their action. So or until the end of their next action. Dazed is from MCDM Flea Mortals. Instead of being stunned where you don't get to do anything, dazed on your turn, you can either take a move, a standard action, or a bonus action, but not 2 or 3 of those, right? So it's not as bad as being completely stunned, but it still kind of sucks, especially in a situation like this where you might get blown back, and then if you're dazed, all you're going to be able to do is try to move back towards her, and that's going to be the end of your turn, right? So it's going to be this constant back and forth, keeps the battlefield really dynamic. One last thing that I think would be kind of cool, when the when the gale force wind comes that moves some of the party members around, you could have a random, either one of these spawners or one of these things of cover just get blasted by the wind. Like if you're indoors and these are pillars or whatever, they just get knocked over by this gale force wind. So maybe Van Richten's been hiding back here, and he's like, "Oh, I have the whole situation figured out." And then all of a sudden, his cover is destroyed, and now he's either got to face the whale, or he's got to try to start moving to find cover someplace else. Or it could introduce the idea to the players that these things can actually be destroyed, and will stop creating monsters. So then you have to decide how many hit points they have, whatever their armor class would be. That's the basic encounter for the Spirit Storm. Let us know what you think. Leave us a comment if you try it down in your. Leave us a comment down in the doobly-doo if you try it in your campaign, and we'll catch you next time on the Henchman's Memoirs.